There comes a moment, and you might not notice it when it happens, when your parents stop calling just to talk. Not because something is wrong, not because they are angry, not because they no longer love you. They simply become quieter. The calls that used to come on Tuesday afternoons, just to tell you about the neighbor's dog or the weather or what they had for lunch, those calls begin to space out. And one day you realize it has been 2 weeks, maybe 3, and they haven't called, and you haven't called either. And life just continued. There is something in that silence that is hard to name. It isn't grief exactly. It isn't guilt exactly. It sits somewhere in between, like a door you didn't realize was closing until it was almost shut. Most of us spend the middle years of our lives moving forward. That is simply what life asks of us. Children, work, mortgages, school runs, the relentless forward motion of a life being built. And our parents, somewhere in the background, become a kind of fixed point. A landmark we know is there without always looking at it. We assume they will stay the same, that the house will always smell the same, that the kitchen will always be where it was, that the chair by the window, the one your father has sat in for 30 years, will always hold him. We do not mean to take them for granted. That is perhaps the most important thing to understand. We do not do it from carelessness. We do it because the mind protects us from certain truths until we are ready to face them. And the truth of our parents' aging is one that arrives very slowly and then all at once. Eric was 53 when his mother fell for the first time. Not badly, a small stumble in the hallway. She caught herself on the wall. She didn't tell him for a week, and even then she mentioned it as though it were nothing. The way she had always minimized things that frightened her. But he drove to her house that Sunday anyway. 2 hours by train, and then a bus through the flat, gray Finnish countryside. Fields and birch trees, and the particular silence of a November afternoon. When he arrived, she was at the stove making soup. She was fine, completely fine. But he stood in the doorway of her kitchen and watched her move, the careful way she held the counter when she turned, the slight hesitation before she bent to get a pot from the low cupboard, and something shifted in him. His mother was 81 years old. He had always known that in the way you know things abstractly. The number had been there, but watching her move through that kitchen, he understood it differently, physically. The way you understand cold when you step outside into it. She was 81 years old, and she was alone in this house. And she was being careful in ways she had never been careful before. They ate the soup together. She asked about his work. He answered. She told him the neighbor had cut down an old apple tree, and she found it sad, though she couldn't quite explain why. He nodded and said he understood. And he did, in a way he wouldn't have understood 10 years earlier. he understood exactly what she meant. There is a particular kind of love that exists between adult children and aging parents. It is not the uncomplicated love of childhood. It has been shaped by years and by absence and by things said and unsaid, by old misunderstandings that were never quite resolved, by distance, geographical and emotional, by the accumulated weight of two people who know each other very deeply and sometimes not at all. It is a love that carries history, and that history is not always clean. Many people, when they begin to feel the approach of loss, find that complicated feeling surface alongside the grief. Guilt for the years they weren't present, frustration at things that are too late to change, even a kind of anger at themselves at times, at the unfairness of how quickly it all moves. These feelings are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that the relationship was real. Ingrid had not had an easy relationship with her father. He had been a difficult man, not cruel, not absent exactly, but emotionally closed in the way that many men of his generation were. A man who showed love through action rather than words, who fixed things rather than said things, who sat at the dinner table reading the newspaper when perhaps what his daughter needed was for him to put it down and ask how she was. She had spent many years in her 30s being quietly angry about this. Then her 40s brought a kind of resignation, an understanding that he was who he was, and that the father she had needed was not the one she had been given, and that there was a specific sadness in that which she had to simply carry. But something changed in her 50s. She went to visit him after her mother died, her mother who had been the interpreter between them, the emotional translator who somehow made the distance manageable. And she sat with her father in the house that now seemed too big and too quiet. And she watched him not know what to do with himself. He made her tea. He showed her some repair he had done on the garden gate. He talked about the price of heating oil. And somewhere in the ordinariness of that afternoon, she saw him clearly for perhaps the first time, not as the father she had wished he were, not as the man who had failed to say the things she needed to hear, but simply as a person, an old person who had done the best he could with what he had been given, which was perhaps not very much, emotionally speaking. A man who was now frightened and alone and showing her the garden gate, because he did not know how else to tell her. He was glad she had come. She did not forgive him in that moment in any dramatic sense. It was quieter than that, more like an exhale than a resolution. She simply let go of something she had been holding for a long time. And when she drove home that evening, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not happiness exactly, more like the relief of putting down something heavy. The quieting of our parents is not only about the phone calls. It is about watching someone who was once the center of your world become smaller in their world. The garden they no longer tend as carefully, the trips they no longer take, the opinions they state less forcefully, the stories they tell more often, because the circle of people who remember those things is shrinking and they are holding on. We sometimes mistake this quieting for contentment, and sometimes it is contentment, but sometimes it is something more complex, a kind of withdrawal that happens when the world moves too fast and the body too slow, and the effort of keeping up becomes more than it is worth. An older person sitting by the window is not always at peace. Sometimes they are simply tired in a way that has no easy name. There is a thing that happens with memory as people age that is rarely spoken about honestly. The past becomes more present, not in a confused way, though that sometimes comes too, but in the sense that the decades lived begin to occupy more interior space than the days being lived now. Your mother may sit across from you at the table and be both there and somewhere else. In the house she grew up in a summer from 50 years ago, with people who are long gone. The living sometimes have to share their parents with the dead. There is something both tender and sorrowful about this. To understand that the person sitting across from you is holding an entire interior world you will never fully know. A world populated with people and places and feelings that predate you completely. A life that existed before you were a thought. Sometimes, sitting with an aging parent in silence, you can feel the weight of all of that, the sheer accumulated depth of a life. And if you let yourself sit with that feeling, rather than rushing past it, it can do something to you. It can make you more humble in the quiet way, more aware that every person you pass in the street is carrying something like this, an entire universe of interior experience, and most of it will never be spoken aloud. Eric started going more often after that November visit. Not every week. He had his own life, his work, his children who were growing up and needing him in different ways. But more often than before, he went without always having a reason. This was new for him, a man who had always needed a reason, an agenda, something to accomplish. He would drive the 2 hours and arrive, and his mother would make coffee and they would sit, and sometimes they would talk and sometimes they wouldn't, and both things felt equally fine. He began to notice things he had never noticed. How she folded a newspaper, the particular way she held her coffee cup with both hands, the small sounds the old house made in the evening, the pipes, the settling of wood, things he had grown up with and stopped hearing entirely and was now hearing again. He realized he was paying attention in a way he hadn't before. Not because he was afraid, though fear was somewhere in the background, quiet and patient, but because he had somehow understood, without quite deciding to, that these afternoons were finite. And that understanding rather than making him sad in a way he couldn't bear, made him more present, more grateful, though that word feels too clean for it. More awake, perhaps, more there. There is a conversation that many adult children never have with their parents. Not because they don't want to, but because the right moment never seems to arrive. Because the ordinary days keep passing, and there is always something else to attend to. Because some things feel too large to approach directly. The conversation about what they are proud of, what they regret, what they would do differently, what they hope for, what frightens them, what they wish they had said to the people they have loved. These conversations are not morbid. They are among the most human conversations there are. But they require a particular kind of courage. The courage to sit with someone in their vulnerability and to offer your own. To stop performing the roles you have always played. The capable child, the reassuring presence. And to simply be two people together, honestly, before the time is gone. Not everyone manages this, and there is no shame in that. But the people who do, almost without exception, say it changed something in them permanently. Not because of what was said, necessarily, but because of what the saying represented. A willingness to be real with each other, even at the end. Ingrid called her father more often in the year after her mother died. It started awkwardly. They were not natural phone call people, especially not with each other. There were silences that stretched and topics that ran out quickly, and moments where she could feel them both reaching for something to say. But she kept calling. And slowly, in those small windows of slightly awkward connection, things came through. He told her once, almost in passing, about a summer he had spent on a boat as a young man. Before her mother, before children, before everything. How he had felt free in a way he hadn't quite felt since. He laughed a little saying it, but she heard something in the laugh that wasn't quite laughter. She stored that away, turned it over in the days that followed. Her father, as a young man, had felt free. She had never thought about her father as a young man before. Not really. He had always simply been her father. But in that moment she glimpsed the longer story. The boy who had become the man who had become her father. A complete human life that preceded her own. It didn't solve anything. It didn't repair the years. But it added something. A kind of dimension she hadn't had before. She began to see him as a whole person rather than only as her father. And that changed how she sat with him. Aging is not only something that happens to our parents. It is something that happens to us through them. Watching someone you love grow old teaches you something about time that nothing else quite can. It shows you concretely and undeniably that the body is temporary, that the person sitting in front of you is moving toward an ending, as all of us are, and that the ending is closer now than it once seemed. This can feel like grief, even when nothing has happened yet. Anticipatory loss, the feeling of missing someone who is still here, is one of the stranger emotional experiences of midlife. You are present with the person and also mourning them simultaneously, loving them and already beginning to grieve them. It is exhausting in a way that is hard to explain to those who haven't felt it. And it is also somehow a gift, because it pushes against the comfortable numbness of taking things for granted. It creates a kind of heightened attention, a tenderness. The walk from the car to the front door of your parents' house, the particular way the door handle feels, the specific smell of the kitchen. These things become precious in a way they weren't before. Not because they are extraordinary, but because you can now feel their finitude. There will come a last time for everything. The last time your mother cooks for you, the last real conversation, the last Sunday afternoon in the house you grew up in, the last time you hear a certain laugh. These last times almost never announce themselves. They come dressed as ordinary moments. And this is perhaps the most quietly heartbreaking thing about life, that we so often do not know we are in the last of something until it is already behind us. We might be living in the last good year with someone we love and not know it. Might be having the last easy conversation, the last unworried afternoon, and the day is ordinary. The weather is unremarkable. We make coffee and look out the window, and we do not know. There is nothing to be done about this, really, except to try when you can to be more awake, to sometimes pause in an ordinary moment and let yourself feel how particular it is, how specific, how it belongs to this exact day, this exact light, this exact person across from you who will not always be across from you. Not in grief, not in dread, just in attention, just in acknowledgement that this is real and it is here and it matters. Eric's mother died on a Thursday in February. Quietly in her sleep, in her own bed, in the house she had lived in for 40 years. He drove up the next morning in the dark, arriving before the light came. He sat for a long time in the house alone before anyone else arrived. In her kitchen, in the particular silence of it. He made himself coffee the way she had always made it, too strong, in a small pot on the stove, not a machine. He sat in the chair by the window. Outside, the snow was soft and very still. The birch trees stood white against the gray sky. Nothing moved. He thought about the last time he had visited, 2 weeks before. A Sunday afternoon, not unlike many other Sunday afternoons. They had talked about his daughter's school. She had shown him something she'd found in an old drawer. A photograph from a summer in the 1960s that he'd never seen before. He had held it for a moment and given it back. He wished now that he had held it longer. But he also understood, sitting in that kitchen with the snow outside, and the coffee going cold in his hands, that the last 2 years had been different, that something had changed in him, and he had been more present, more attending, more there, and that he would carry that with him, not without pain, but with something that felt, despite everything, like a kind of quiet gratitude. There is no clean ending to this. Grief for a parent is not something you move through and come out the other side of, healed and whole. It stays with you and changes shape over time. It becomes part of who you are. But there is something for many people that also comes in the wake of losing a parent that is not entirely darkness. A kind of clarity, a rearrangement of what matters. The things that seemed urgent before seem less so, and certain other things, a voice, an afternoon, a presence, become suddenly irreversibly precious in their absence. And sometimes people find that they become better at being present with the people still living, with their own children, with friends, with the ordinary days, as though the loss taught them something about time that they couldn't have learned any other way. If your parents are still here and there is distance between you, emotional or physical or both, you don't need to do anything dramatic about it. You don't need to have the large conversation. You don't need to resolve every old wound. Sometimes it is enough to simply call, to sit with them in the ordinary way, to let there be silence without filling it, to notice the way they hold their cup, to listen to the story they've told before as though you are hearing it for the first time, because you are, in a way. Every time is different when you are paying attention, to let them know through your presence rather than your words that you see them, not as a function, not as a role, as a person who has lived a long and complicated and full life, who is still here, who is still trying, who is glad you came. The quieting of our parents is not the end of something, or not only the end. It is also an invitation to step closer, to be slower, to listen differently, to understand that the time is finite. It always was. And to let that understanding make you more tender rather than more afraid. Outside, perhaps, the snow is falling, or the rain is against the window, and someone is sitting in a chair in a house somewhere, getting a little older, a little quieter, hoping that the phone will ring, or simply that someone will come and sit nearby and not need anything in particular. Just to be there. Just to be there while there is still time. If this quiet moment resonated with you, you are always welcome here. This channel was created for slow reflections, honest emotions, and the thoughts many people carry silently through life. If you'd like more stories like this, you can gently subscribe and return whenever you need a peaceful place to think, feel, or simply listen. Thank you for spending this moment here tonight. Take care of yourself and rest well.